Okay, creepy story time. This is a story about a guy named Danny who decides to rent a cabin in the Appalachian Mountains. And if you know anything about the Appalachian Mountains, you know where this is going. So Danny finds a cabin online. It's cheap, but it's described as remote and super peaceful, and that's exactly what he wanted. So obviously he makes his trip to the mountains, and if you've been to the mountains, you know that the roads they can be really scary. They're super narrow. You're going up, like for miles and miles. You can't see around a lot of the turns because, you know, the trees and just the edge of the mountain and it being so winding. It was a creepy ride, he said, but when he got there, the cabin was what was described. It was a nice little cabin right on the edge of the ridge. And it looked kind of weathered, but still it was like nice and cozy. It had like a single bedroom, a wood burning stove, and the porch looked right over the valley. So it was everything he wanted, and he was happy with it. Now the first night was super peaceful. He said he even slept with the window open because the mountain breeze just felt really nice. You could hear the crickets and stuff in the woods. It was super peaceful. But the second night is where things started to get really weird. So first he heard slow but deliberate footsteps on the porch, which is like right outside the window, and that startled him. And then he hears tapping on the window, and that really startled him. So he grabs his phone and he checks the time, and it's exactly 3:12 a.m. So he's really creeped out, but obviously he's gonna go see what the tapping is, because don't they always? So there's like a little part in the curtain where he can like kind of peek through a little bit. So he peeks out there and he sees a tall, like abnormally thin figure. And so he opens the curtains completely. Why, I don't know. But he opens the curtains and he sees it's a woman, but like she looks not right. She's super thin, pale, barefoot. She's wearing like a nightgown, and she has long dark hair that covers part of her face, kind of like my creepy doll back there. And he asked her, like, do you need help? He said she didn't say anything. She just stood there and like her head was like tilted slightly. Oh, he also did say that her eyes were super dark and empty, so that's creepy. But then he was like, are you lost? Like he's trying to get her to answer and she's not saying anything. And then all of a sudden she just kind of like smiles just a little bit. And she's like, let me in. This really freaked him out, and then her smile got way wider, like abnormally wide, and he went to grab a flashlight. So he rushes to grab a flashlight, and when he turns to shine it towards her, she's gone. So the next morning he just gets up and he hikes down the mountain like a mile, and there's like this little mountain general store, and the clerk in there looks at him and he's like, you look like shit. And he's like, yeah, I didn't sleep very well last night. There was a weird woman that showed up to my cabin, and she was super pale with dark hair, and, you know, he described her or whatever. And the clerk was like, where are you staying? And he was like, the cabin is called Black Hollow Cabin. 'Cause, you know, they name all their cabins and stuff. And he was like, that's where you're staying? And Danny was like, yeah, why? And he was like, do you know who that is? Is someone like missing or something? And the clerk was like, people have been seeing that woman for about 50 years. And the people that see her tend to go missing. So Danny was like, what am I supposed to do? He said, do not talk to her and absolutely do not let her in. So that night, Danny is freaked out, and so he has all the lights on and he's got all the windows and doors completely locked, and he just sits on the couch all night with his like hunting utensil in his lap. Sorry, I don't know what I can say on here. And 3:12 a.m. here come the footsteps on the porch, and then here come the taps. But this time she says his name. He hears Danny. So Danny just ignores her like he's told, and she says, Danny, let me in. And he just keeps ignoring her literally all night long. And then he hears the footsteps leave the porch. So the next morning he packs his stuff and he leaves, but he stops by that store, and all the clerk says to him is, she'll find someone else.
You have to understand that when you go into the Appalachian Mountains, you are entering into another realm. And there is a set of unspoken rules that you must follow. Rule number 1, if you hear something calling your name, right, you didn't. There is nothing there. And you should not respond. Do not say hello. Do not say, who is it? Just run away. Because something is trying to gain permission. And by you acknowledging it, you are allowing it to come after you. If you hear screams in the mountains, right, you didn't. And do not go towards the direction of the screams to try and help. Because once again, something is trying to lure you. If you see people, you don't. If you hear crying, you're not hearing it. Do not respond to this at all because you are giving permission to whatever is in those woods to come after you. Now, if you are to go camping in the Appalachian Mountains, right, you have to remember, at night, you must keep a fire going at all times. And it's not for warmth, it's not for cooking, it's to keep you safe. And if you are going to camp in a tent, make sure when you go into that tent, it is sealed up. There are no holes, there are no cracks. And if you hear any kind of screaming, yelling, or anyone calling your name, do not respond. Do not go to sleep. And if something wakes you up, stay alert, and once again, do not respond. Now, it's very important when you are walking through the Appalachian Mountains, if you come across a deer carcass, do not touch it, do not stare at it, walk away, ignore it, because this is something, once again, trying to lure you into the woods. Now, if it comes to the point that something is chasing you and it gets you and there is no escape, fight as hard as you can, whether it's a person, an animal. If it's something else though, and you know what I'm talking about, well, you just let it get you, right? Because at that point, there's nothing you can do. And there's an old saying, you go into the Appalachian Mountains with 2 bullets, right? You fire the first one at something that isn't a person, that isn't an animal. And if it doesn't run away, you know what to do with the second one.
We have an Appalachian Mountains story on our hands. So I was listening to one of my favorite spooky story podcasts, and I came across this one, and it was pretty spooky. This guy says that he went to college at Appalachian State, and for fun, he didn't really like to go to bars or to go drinking, but he loved to go to abandoned places and just kind of roam around and explore. So he says that there was some sort of cave that was underneath a bridge, and he had been there before, the year prior. Nothing spooky really happened. So he had told his friends, you know what, this place is kind of cool, we should go. His friends are like, okay, yeah, let's go. They are going under there. He says that it's so tight to get in. They have to like shimmy their way in there. First of all, I have claustrophobia. It ain't happening. So anyways, they get there, and he says that off the bat, he noticed that it was very different this time. There was so many different markings, pentagram markings, and it looked like someone had some sort of seance in there. Again, that wasn't there the year prior. Nonetheless, they continue on their little tour, and they're going deeper and deeper, and right above, they go into this crawl space to get to the next area. Right above that crawl space, it says he's in there, and it's pointing in the direction that they're going. Of course, people always do and say spooky things, so he didn't think much of it. Him and his friends are like, are you still down? And they were down. They are going into that crawl space to go into the next space, and all he has is a flash to his iPhone. There's a few of them, about 3 of them. So they are crawling in there, and as we know, the flash to our phones cannot reach that far. So he saw some sort of shadow, and he didn't know what it was. So he was like, okay, what was that? He asks his friend for his flashlight because he had an actual flashlight. He shines it, and he sees this really weird creature. He says he's never seen anything like this before. He's also never seen a giraffe, but you know what a giraffe would look like. And he had never seen anything similar to this. And as soon as they shine the light to him or to it, it literally started bouncing towards them, like off the walls, in no specific direction, just going. Obviously, they book it. They are out. They're like, you know what, forget this. And they're out of there. They end up talking to each other and they're like, okay, we all saw the same thing. What do you think that was? No one had any type of explanation. That next morning, the person that's telling the story says that he is taking a shower. He's brushing his teeth in the shower. And out of nowhere, he spits out like this clot of blood. That had never happened before. Later that day, he meets with one of the friends that went with him into that cave. And the first thing that he says was, hey, you know what's weird? I spit out like a clot of blood today. And they were like, okay, we have to talk to the third person that was with us because... And literally the same exact thing happened to him. He doesn't like to talk about the story. One, because he's scared. Two, he has a feeling that not a lot of people will believe him. But it is so crazy, the lore and the secrecy of what happens in the Appalachian Mountains, because we literally have no idea what is truly going on in there and what any of this is. They ended up doing some sort of research, and he ended up coming up with some sort of demon. That it was a demon that was called to protect that area. Nonetheless, he doesn't like to talk about it, but isn't this scary? Like, I don't know, the Appalachian Mountains just freak me out. Listen to the story on the podcast called Radio Rental. So spooky. If you guys have not heard about that podcast, I highly suggest it. And if you guys have any spooky stories, make sure that you send them.
We think something tried to attack us in our cabin in the woods last night. Me and a few of my friends thought it would be fun to have a fall Tennessee trip. There are two of us that really like to listen to Appalachian Trail stories. We listen to them because they're a little spooky, but honestly, I don't think either of us really believed them until last night. Weird things did start happening when I first got to the cabin. So our cabin is this Airbnb kind of in the woods. There's still a few other houses, but right behind the house is the giant hill and there's woods that kind of lead up. I was the first person to arrive, so I walked to the back of the house, typed in the code, and started walking inside with my dog. My dog was sniffing around, but then when we walked into the living room, she started barking aggressively at this little door underneath the stairs. It kind of freaked me out because I was here alone and she usually doesn't growl at random objects, so it was just out of character for her, and I got a little freaked out. So I prayed over the house, I turned on all the lights, and I walked around, and the growling stopped. Even in that area, she didn't growl anymore. So Saturday night, everything was pretty normal. Everyone else arrived, we said hi, we got everything unpacked. Sunday is when we started hearing the weird howling. So I walked outside in the morning to walk my dog, and I heard howling, and I didn't think it was weird because we're in the woods. It just seemed far away. It didn't seem odd. My friends also, when they walked outside, said they heard the same thing. But later that night when I walked outside, the howling had changed a little bit. It still sounded like an animal, but it kind of sounded like a tune. Almost how birds have their own tune, but an animal had the same thing. It was just 3 or 4 notes, and I thought it was kind of cool. Obviously, I was still a little freaked out. Now, Monday when we went hiking is when we heard the scream. It honestly just sounded like a random lady in the woods screaming, but then there was also another voice also screaming. They weren't screaming help or anything, just screaming. We couldn't tell where it was coming from, just that it was like really far away, but it did sound a little bit scared. I don't know if it was people playing around or not. That was the only weird thing that happened on Monday. Now, last night, Tuesday, is when things got really scary. So last night we decided we were going to do the bonfire and the hot tub. Now, the bonfire and hot tub are both behind the house, but the woods are also right behind the house. As soon as you walk out, there's a hill that goes straight up because we're in the mountains and there's trees right there, so it's very heavily wooded. During the bonfire, everything was normal. I had my dog outside, they had their dog outside. We had our food. None of the dogs were acting weird. It was fun. We were taking photos. Nothing seemed off. I was a little on edge just because we're in the dark next to the woods and I'm a big scaredy cat, but nothing seemed weird. Now, the hot tub is right next to the woods. The fence for privacy around 3 sides of it, but the 4th side is a side that's open to the woods and the side that also connects from the house to the hot tub. I was really nervous about swimming at night, and I had told my friends this. My friends thought it was funny, and so they started cracking jokes about, oh, do you hear that? Do you see that? But then all of a sudden, my one friend goes really quiet. She freezes, she looks like she's scared, and she goes, guys, I'm not joking, I just saw something. I obviously thought she was still joking, and I was like, please, stop. I don't want to joke like this. Let's talk about something else. And she's like, no, I promise you, I saw someone walk that direction. It was towards the house into the woods. I was like, please don't joke like that. And she's like, I'm not joking, Belinda, I'm not joking. And honestly, she seemed actually scared. So I told her, I was like, hey, I believe you, but can we please not bring attention to it? Because if we're gonna stay in the hot tub, I don't wanna be freaked out the whole time. I already wanna go inside. So we kind of moved on, but I was still very on edge. And I honestly was like sitting kind of on the edge of the hot tub so that I could hop out if I needed to. A little bit later, we start hearing this sound in the woods. It sounds like rustling, but it sounds kind of heavy. So I'm telling myself it has to be a big animal because there's no way it's a person in these woods. There's no way it's one of those stupid podcast things in these woods. It literally has to be an animal. And even if it's an animal, I want to go inside. After we hear the rustling, the howling starts coming back. But now it sounds less animal, like more of a tune. It just seemed eerie, it seemed off. It didn't seem fully like an animal howl. Then one of my friends spots this shadowy figure in the woods. It's far enough away to where we can't really make out what it is, but it's large and it's walking slowly towards us. It's slowly coming towards us down the hill. We all quickly get out of the hot tub and start making our way inside, hoping that it's just a person walking around out there and it doesn't see us. But honestly, I feel like it was looking at me. My friends all felt like it was looking at them. I know that it was looking at me. There's no way it wasn't. It's not like I made eye contact, but it felt like I did. So we came inside, locked the doors, locked the windows, closed the blinds, made sure everything was not visible from the outside. Like no one outside can look inside. About 10 minutes later is when we heard knocking at the door. We could kind of see the shadow of a figure outside the door, but we couldn't make out the facial features or anything like that. It was just a shadow. And even though it looked like a human shape, we didn't come to the door or open the door or say anything. We just acted like we weren't home. And then throughout the night, every few minutes we'd hear knocking either on the window or on the side of the house or on the door. And we just kind of like stayed in one room. Like everyone was kind of freaked out, so we all huddled together in one room and we all just slept in there. I was really stressed out and I was one of the first people to fall asleep because whenever I'm stressed I get super tired. So I don't know when the knocking stopped. One of my friends said they stopped hearing the knocking around 3 a.m. This morning there was no knocking. No one left the house till it was bright outside though, because we were all still pretty freaked out. So far today, nothing weird has happened. I did talk to the neighbor this morning to ask them if any weird stuff has ever happened to them, and they said that sometimes they hear a weird howl. So I do know that that's kind of normal around here, but they said nothing has ever like progressed past that. They did tell me to be careful and not to look too deep into it though, because sometimes looking deep into it can cause more stuff to happen. I am home alone right now and I have the dogs with me in case anything weird happens, but I'm not gonna be going outside anytime soon. And we still don't really know what it was that came to the house last night. I'm just hoping that it doesn't come back tonight.
Y'all gotta hear this creepy story that happened here in the Appalachian Mountains in eastern Kentucky. This story was sent to me by one of my followers. As children, we were always told to come home when the porch lights come on. If you hear or see something, no you did not. And never answer to your name being called when you know you're alone, even if the voice sounds familiar. I was scared of the dark and never much of a rule breaker when it came to the woods, especially at night, and I knew my rules about the woods. But as an adult, I got a little more curious and I love to take hikes and walks, especially in the Moorhead area. My mom and grandparents who were from the area would always warn me when I went to Lockagee that I needed to be safe and stay vigilant. Lockagee is a popular rock formation near Cave Run Lake, and it's known for apparent cult activity. One day, me and my friend and my second born, who was 2 at the time, were wasting time in Moorhead. My friend had never been to Lockagee, so I told him, let's take a ride up and I'll show you where it's at. As we were driving by Lockagee, I started to tell him about the rumored cult activity that happened there. It led me into talking about another location in the area that was rumored to have cult activity. This place is called Clack Mountain. He said, well, while we're out, why don't we just drive there too? I couldn't remember exactly how to get there because when I went, I wasn't the driver, so I put it into GPS. It showed that we were really close to it, but in my mind, I was thinking, I don't think that Clack Mountain was this close to Lockagee, but it had been a few years since I had been, so I was thinking maybe I was just wrong. Not even a quarter of a mile down the road, it tells me to turn left onto this small one-way gravel road. Now, as soon as we turn onto this road, I'm thinking something isn't right, this ain't familiar. So I give myself enough time to find a spot to turn around. Again, this is a one-way road, so if you met someone, you'd have to either hit the ditch or reverse it all the way back out. Finally find a good spot, and I hear my friend say, do you see that? I glance up quickly and see what looks like a really large crane. It was black, and I mean like black as slate black. Its wings were so big it looked as if it had a cape over its shoulders. It had to stand every bit of 8-9 foot tall, and although it was very bird-like, it also looked humanish. I looked back down and focused on getting turned around and getting us out of there, because I knew even if I did see whatever that was, no I didn't. My friend and I remained completely silent until we made it off of that gravel road. Once we hit the main road, it felt like the tense energy just completely left. My friend asked me what was that we just saw. I told him I didn't know, but I thought that it was best that we pretended like we never saw it and never go back. I haven't been back to Lockagee since. Let me know what y'all think about this story in the comments. If you have a creepy or scary story or unexplainable story that you want to share with me, go ahead and send it to my DMs. Or you can email it to me at allyshaysworld@gmail.com. I'm going to try to upload another video or two today. It's been so fun going through y'all's stories. Don't worry, you can remain anonymous if you want to. Love y'all.
I've heard so many spooky stories that came out of the Appalachian Mountains, and I love them all. I've got one for you from someone who said that back in 2023, it was the scariest night of their lives. Creepy story time. This story is from the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. So this guy's property is along the edge of the woods, and late one night, he steps outside to go and close up his workshop. He said he brought his golden retriever, Ozzy, with him. Now, Ozzy is one of these dogs that is super chill, never really growls or barks, loves everybody. Not very easily spooked, but that night, the second they stepped off the porch, Ozzy's hair stood on end and he started growling real deep in his throat. Cautiously now, he made his way over to his workshop and he went to pull the door closed, and all of a sudden, everything went wrong. First, he said everything around went completely silent, like too quiet, so quiet he could hear his own heartbeat. And then, just like that, the silence broke. He described it as sounding like hundreds of things were running through the trees, snapping branches, crunching leaves, footsteps pounding on the ground, bushes thrashing. The sound didn't come from just one place. He said it came from all around him, circling the property. It was such a large area for all this chaos to be happening at once. It was mind-boggling. He said he whipped his flashlight out and he scanned the edge of the property and he could see nothing, but he kept hearing all of these sounds get closer and closer and louder and louder. Ozzy was even getting more freaked out and pressing his body up against him and growling even louder still, not moving an inch. He said the atmosphere just felt super heavy and wrong, almost like a storm was coming in, but it wasn't windy at all. There were no clouds in the sky, just a sick, panicked feeling in his gut that something was very wrong. So he and Ozzy sprinted to the house and slammed the door behind them and locked it. Even from inside, he could still hear the snapping and crashing outside in the woods. And then after a few minutes, total silence. All at once, it just ended. Everything went back to normal like nothing ever happened. He says he has no idea what could have been out there that night, but all he knows is that his dog has never acted like that prior or since, and he has never experienced anything like that before. And whatever was in those trees, he said could not have been just animals. It felt like something evil was lurking. I feel like every Appalachia story is so different from the next. It fascinates me, and I want to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
Today, I'm going to talk about my experience when I was a kid living in Jasper, Georgia, with Appalachian feral people. Notice how I said Appalachian and not Appalachian, because y'all got mad at me in my last post. I don't really think it matters how you say the name. Potato, tomato type shit. When you live somewhere, you don't refer to it as, oh yeah, I live in Appalachia. You just say, I live in Jasper. I never heard people refer to the place I grew up as Appalachia until I moved away and got on TikTok and saw people who didn't grow up there talking about it. But anyways, so I grew up, on this road called Yellow Creek Road. It's the same road that Gibbs Gardens is on. Still never been to Gibbs Gardens, even though I grew up walking distance from there. I think I'll go this summer. But basically, I lived in a trailer park type situation, kind of like off the main road. So when you're on Yellow Creek, you go down this big winding road, and then on that road, there's a neighborhood with trailers. And it's not your stereotypical like trailer park. It's like each person has about 4 to 5 acres of land trailer park, so they're very spaced out It's just a big ass neighborhood where people own a lot of land. There wasn't really street lights or anything like that on my road. It was very dark. So at nighttime, like, the only light in my yard was my front porch light, but facing the back of our house was just woods. We didn't have any lights back there. It was just pitch black, dark. Okay, so basically, I have 2 brothers that live with me in this trailer, and my mom. And so one day, me and my older brother were home alone, and we're just, like, chilling in his room watching YouTube videos, and I hear something on the back of our trailer, like, tapping on the window of the room we're in, and it was loud. It was like a bang situation. But obviously, like, my brother and I are home alone. I was in middle school at this point. I don't remember what grade I was in. I was probably in, like, 7th grade or something. And he was in high school. So we were both young. And so this banging on the back of our trailer kept happening. And, like, it was definitely a person. There's no way it could have been an animal, because it sounded like someone was knocking, like, trying to scare us. And at first we thought it was like a joke, like maybe our younger brother and our mom had gotten home and they were just trying to fuck with us. So I ran to the front of my house and I looked out the window to see if anyone was in the driveway, and there was nobody there. And that's when I was like, oh shit, that's not mom. So we ran to the doors and locked them, and we shut all the blinds, and we just waited till my mom got home. And we told her what happened, and she was like, what the fuck, that's weird. Fast forward a couple weeks, I'm in the car with my mom. She just, like, wanted to drive to the gas station. It was nighttime, and yeah, I guess she was buying cigarettes or something. But, so we drive to the gas station, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and my mom gets out, and she goes inside and buys whatever she's buying. She comes back out to the pump, and this old man is just, like, sitting there at the gas station. He has a big-ass beard, and I remember he was wearing overalls with, like, no shirt on underneath, so, like, you could see his nipples and stuff. So this dude looks at my mom, and he says something to her, and she doesn't quite catch it, and so she's like, excuse me? And then the guy's like, y'all live over there off Yellow Creek. And my mom was like, yeah, like, do you live in our neighborhood? Is that how you know us? And then he literally looks at her, and he's like, I watch y'all sometimes. And at this point, like, I'm kind of hearing this conversation because the windows are down, and I kind of, like, look, and I'm like, what the fuck? And my mom looks at me, and her eyes get big, and he basically explains how he sits on our property in the dark and watches us through the windows. And my mom was like, what the fuck? And so she immediately, like, turns away from him and gets in the car and locks the doors, and we just drive home. And then as soon as we pull out of the gas station parking lot, my mom's like, what the fuck was that? And so I start talking to her, and I'm like, do you think that was whoever the fuck was banging on our house a couple weeks ago? But yeah, after that, we kept our blinds closed. That dude was fucking weird looking. He barely had any teeth. He was very, very country, very, like, strong Appalachian dialect. So he could have been a feral person. He could have just been a creep. But regardless, the whole time we lived at this place, which was from when I was in 4th grade until after I graduated high school, really weird shit like that would happen. And I have a lot more weird stories about people in this area. So let me know what you think. If you think it's just a creepy dude, or if you think it could have been a feral person. Because what the fuck is this dude doing in our lawn in the middle of the woods at nighttime? But yeah, thanks for watching, y'all. Have a good day.
He said, "I'll never go hunting in those woods again." My name's Sydney. I grew up in the Appalachia region the first 21 years of my life, and I tell some pretty spooky stories. This is about a hunter and his experience that happened to him while he was in the Appalachian Mountains. It is very chilling, but he wanted me to share his experience with you. He wants to remain anonymous, so we will call him Brad. So Brad and his friend Mark had been lifelong friends, and they had been hunting since they were teenagers in the Appalachian Mountains. Brad said it was the first day of rifle season, so him and his friend got in the car, and this was very early hours of the morning, so it was still dark out, but they needed it to be dark so they could get to their tree stand without spooking any of the deer. Brad said he took the southern ridge where his old tree stand was bolted, and again, he had been hunting this land for a long time, so he knew where his tree stand was, and he knew the trail to get there. His friend took another direction to go down to a denser part of the forest, and then they agreed to meet back at the truck at a certain time. So he hiked up the familiar ridge, but then he noticed something was wrong. His tree stand was gone. Not broken, not fallen, not rotted. It was gone. Like the bolts were gone. No trace of his tree stand. There was also no scrape marks like an animal had got it. It was just the bare wood where the tree stand used to be. Started searching along the ridge trying to find like remnants or anything of his tree stand, and then he found this like faint game trail that led down the side of the woods. He said he didn't recognize this game trail, but he followed it expecting it to go down and it come out to like a creek. But when he got to the bottom, he found something very odd. It was like this little cluster of rundown shacks. Very rundown with like sagging roofs. The windows of these little shacks were like covered up with boards, and it was just so odd to him because he has never seen this before. And then as he got closer to the shacks, he noticed down in the mud footprints. He said that they were human footprints, and it was bare feet that kind of just circled around the cabin, some larger, some smaller. But then even more bizarre than that, he found some of the hardware for his deer stand. So that's when he really starts to become uneasy, and he calls out, "Hello, is anyone in there?" because he wants to know why they've taken down his tree stand. Nobody answers, so he gets a little bit closer to one of the front porches of the shack, and he sees an old plate and like some half-eaten food on the plate. So people have obviously been here, but he's not getting a response and he's not seeing anyone. So at this point, he's like, okay, I'm just gonna go. He turns to leave to go back up the trail from where he came, and he sees someone standing at the top of the ridge. Brad said it looked just like his friend Mark, but much taller and wearing different clothes. And then the person shouts at him and says, "Brad, why aren't you in your tree stand?" Brad knows this isn't Mark and starts to absolutely freak out and just slowly move away. He says he didn't lift his rifle or anything like that because this person wasn't like an imminent danger to him, but he felt so uneasy. He's just like, I've got to get the heck out of here. He doesn't run because that's one of the rules. He just slowly backs away and goes back up the game trail that he found. He's so terrified by this, he's like, I can't even hunt anymore. He goes back to the truck to wait for his friend, his real friend, Mark. Hours go by. Mark makes it back to the truck. He's killed no deer, but Brad tells him what happened to him. Mark did not believe him. Mark was like, you're making all of this up. You're seeing things, dude. Like, what is wrong with you? So Mark's like, okay, you know what? Tomorrow during the daytime, we're going to go back down that trail and you're going to show me this weird, creepy cabin place that you found. They go back the next day. Hunting stand is still missing, the deer stand, but the game trail is gone and they can't find the cabins. So what do you think happened here? This story actually freaked me out. And for all those people who don't believe and say these are just made up spooky stories, why are there so many of them? Why are there so many experiences like this? And if you want to hear more spooky stories like this one, then just follow along.
Alright, so I have a spooky Appalachian Trail story time. Now I know that this could probably be debunked, but it really spooked me. So I was hiking on the Appalachian Trail with my fiance, and I turned around and looked off into the woods, and I saw what looked like a dog. Like, it looked like a big dog that looked kind of wolf-like, like maybe a husky or a German shepherd or something like that. So I turned to my fiance and I was like, hey, do you see that? And I pointed over to it and he was like, it's just somebody's dog. But there was no person nearby and the dog wasn't moving. It was just standing there staring at us. Well, we stood there for a bit looking at it, trying to figure out what it was, and then all of a sudden, it was a tree stump. Like, it didn't change into a tree stump, it just suddenly was a tree stump. It's hard to, like, explain. But the thing is, the tree stump didn't look like a dog. It is very hard to explain, but we saw a dog, and then suddenly the dog was a tree stump. And, like, it looked enough like a dog to where I didn't even say, hey, there's a dog over there. My fiance just was like, oh, yeah, that's somebody's dog. So, I don't know. Could have been just some kind of coincidence where our brains were just not working right. But I've heard a lot of stories about the Appalachian Trail, and I thought that was kind of spooky. What do y'all think?
Hi guys, I'm going to tell you some creepy things that have personally happened to me while living in the Appalachian Mountains. So, my family cemetery is across the road from my parents' house, but they own all the property, and it's pretty close to their house. And when my grandfather passed away and he was buried up there, every night there would be like a flickering light up around his grave, and there was no lights up there, like no solar lights, nothing like that. And it happened for a couple years, and then eventually it stopped, but it always happened at the same time every night. So, kind of creepy. At my parents' house, they had wooden rocking chairs outside on the porch, and they rock by themselves sometimes at night. Also, my parents, they built a log cabin, and that's where I grew up. And log cabins, whenever there's temperature changes, the logs constantly expand and contract. So we're assuming this is what it was, but one night, it was late at night and we was all asleep, and there's just constant, like, thumping outside of the house. Like, it was so loud, it was deafening, and it was probably one of the scariest things, because we honestly have no idea what it was, but I couldn't even describe the sound because it was so creepy. And the only thing we could think of is it was probably the logs expanding and contracting because it was really, really cold. It was actually came an ice storm, so that's what we think it was. A few years ago, a distant family member passed away, but they lived up the same holler that I used to live up, and the moment that they took their last breath, the power went off in the whole holler.
So, let me tell y'all about this little incident that just happened at my fucking house. So, my 3-year-old, he's nonverbal, and he can only say like maybe 3 or 4 words. And he comes in and out the house all day long. Kid never wears shoes. He's just a little boy, little 3-year-old boy. And I can usually tell, like, wherever he's at, I can hear him getting in the shed or hearing him running on a porch. Nick's usually down in the garage if Nick is home. But 10-15 minutes goes by and I don't hear Bronx. So I holler down at Nick and I'm like, hey, do you have Bronx down there with you? Nick's like, no. And I'm like, well, I can't find him. So we look all around the house, can't find him. We're hollering for him. He's not saying anything. 2 or 3 minutes goes by. We're both getting in a panic mode. Nick hops into his truck. He drives down to the bottom of the driveway just to see if he might be at the neighbor's house, which he's never done before. And while Nick's down there, I'm still screaming for Bronx, and I finally hear him, but he's like way back in the fucking woods, And my kid has never went past, like, I don't know, where Nick quits weed eating. I don't know. He doesn't ever go into the woods. He's never done that before. But I'm hearing him screaming, so I call Nick on the phone. I'm like, hey, he's in the woods, come back home. Nick comes back home. I'm running up in the woods trying to figure out where the fuck he's at, how he got into the woods, how he got way back in there, like he's barefoot. Like, how far are you gonna go if you're barefoot? Then I remember me as a kid. Anyways. And so, me and Nick are running back into the woods, and we're getting closer to him. We can hear him, you know, he's starting to get closer, but we still can't see him. And all of a sudden, like, it gets super fucking quiet, and I heard a woman's voice. We hear a woman's voice, and she says, he's right here. And, like, we almost stopped dead in our tracks and looked at each other. We didn't stop, but we turned around and looked at each other like, who the fuck has got our fucking kid in the fucking wood? Like, we don't even have any neighbors that are that close by. Like, our closest neighbor behind us is like 2 miles back in behind us. And we found Bronx. He's sitting on a log, bawling his little eyeballs out because he's either lost or afraid that he's going to be in trouble, whatever it is. But as we come off the mountain,
I looked at Nick and I was like, you heard that, didn't you? And he was like, yeah. He was like, that was a woman, and she said he's right here. I was like, I know, but there is no woman in fucking sight. And it still has my nerves tore up. Like, who was that?
Hey friends, this story was sent to me by one of my viewers who swears up and down that this truly happened to her out on the Appalachian Trail. So if you like spooky, scary story times, stick around. She and her brother had been planning this trip for a really, really long time to go hike one of the sections of the Appalachian Trail in the more rural area of Tennessee, kind of bordering North Carolina and Tennessee. She said she remembers the day starting off normally, but the feeling in the air was just really heavy. She said it was like thick with humidity, just kind of like that icky, sticky feeling. By dusk, they were completely exhausted. They had been hiking for the entire day. They went off and they found a little clearing so that they could pop up their tent and set up camp for the night. There was no wind, no kind of like sounds, just the silence of the forest. She said it was kind of like an eerie, quiet feeling, like the earth was listening to her, or just trying to be so quiet that it could almost hear their thoughts. Even though they felt a little bit uneasy, they still fell asleep in their tent. And around 1:30 a.m., she woke up, startled. And at first she didn't know why she was woken up, then she heard it. A voice from outside of her tent calling her name. It wasn't loud, it wasn't super aggressive, it was kind of just like the whisper of somebody who would be sitting right next to you. Like a soft, kind of coaxing voice. Her first thought was that it was her brother, and when she looked over to see if he was in his sleeping bag still, he was gone. So she sprung into action. She unzipped the tent and was shining her flashlight through the trees in the pitch darkness of the Appalachian Trail, mind you. And that's when she saw him. Or what looked like him. He was about 20 feet away from her, just kind of leaning against a tree. He was wearing the same jacket, he had the same backpack on, straps all hanging loose. He looked like he was kind of slumped over, like tired, or maybe even injured, but his face was turned just enough so that she couldn't see it. And then he started talking to her. He said, "Come here, it's me, I'm injured, I'm hurt, come here." She said the words were his, like she could tell that it was his voice, but something about it was wrong, like almost as if it was coming from a recording. Like it was kind of laggy, like half a second too short, almost distorted. She said that in that moment her stomach flipped upside down and she called out to him and she said, "Eric, are you okay?" Which, if you know anything about Appalachia, you know that the first rule is to never speak back to a voice that you hear. Like, I get it, I know you thought that it was your brother, but like, oh, fuck. Anyways, once she said Eric, that's when the thing's head snapped directly towards her. Like, snapped with a sickening sound crack through the fucking forest, she said. She said once the thing turned its face completely towards her, it wasn't even a face. It was more of just like skin stretched out to like cover something, or to just like cover your bones, to cover your skull. There was no face, it was just skin. So naturally, she froze, standing still like deer in headlights, when all of a sudden from behind her, she heard, "What are you doing outside of the tent?" So she whips around, and there's Eric peeking his head out of the tent that she had just come out of after seeing him not in his sleeping bag. She looked at him, then she turned back around. The thing was completely gone. And when she was trying to explain to him like what she saw, he was completely not having it. He was not believing it. She said that she was too scared to like take down the tent and then go hike off back into the woods, back to their car, because they were already pretty far in there. They were pretty deep in the woods. Yeah, she says that she's still super mad. But yeah, she says that she's still super mad at her brother for not believing her. But yeah, crazy shit happens in the middle of nowhere. Urge the cowardly dog all the way, you guys. Anyways, if you guys have a story that you would like me to read for you, please feel free to send it to my email. I'll either have it linked below down here, or I'm gonna put it in my bio so that people can just email me stories and I will read them. And I'm super excited to hear about all of your experiences.
Well, Davister, you heard correct. I grew up in the Appalachia for the first 21 years of my life, and it's Appalachia Mountains, not Appalachia. If you're from there, you know, don't fight me on this. And also, if you're from Appalachia, you know the rules. You shut your curtains at night, you lock your doors, you lock your windows, you never go out in the woods alone. You use a buddy system, and if you think you heard something, no you didn't. There's one particular time growing up, I did not follow these rules, and what happened to me still bothers me to this day. I used to ride horses, and me and my friends would go trail riding a lot. This particular day, it was just me and one other friend. We went out into the woods around sunset, and this was a pretty big property with lots of like trees. There were some open field streams, things like that. And we knew the trail pretty well. So this particular day, I don't know what got into us, but we decided we were going to play a game of hide and seek on horseback. I told her that I would hide first, so I went up the trail a little ways and then cut off over this like stream back into this more remote area of the woods. There was this old rundown cabin that I decided to hide behind, and my horse was very docile, like very gentle. Nothing ever spooked him, but as I was hiding there, he became extremely restless. This again was not at all in my horse's nature, so I started to feel like really uneasy, like what is going on. I decided I was just going to take him back down to the trail and just go try to find my friend so that we could get back to the barn. My horse would not budge, refused to go back down that trail. I finally got off my horse because I was like, well, maybe if I just lead him, he'll follow me back down. And this is the part that still terrifies me, but at that moment, everything got really, really quiet, including my horse. And I heard my friend say, "Hey, Sydney." I was like, oh my God, thank God she's found me. I'm like, hey girl, I'm over here. But I couldn't see her. Like, I was like, where are you? Hello? And then I started to hear psst, psst. And then again, Sydney, this way. At this point, y'all, I am in tears. I get back on my horse and sprint back to the barn. By the time I get back to the barn, it's almost dark out, and I see that my friend's horse is in the stall. I'm like, what the heck? Why did she come back and just leave me out there in the woods? I mean, this whole incident was maybe about 30 minutes, so I don't know why she would have just left. I find her in the tack room, and she was like, you were out there for like an hour and a half. It was like, I couldn't find you. I didn't know where you were, so I just came back. I look at the clock, and she was absolutely right. It had been almost 2 hours that I was out there, and it felt like it was only like 20 minutes. I told her what happened to me. We were both just so terrified, like trying in our brains to figure out what that could have been. And to this day, I still have no idea. So yes, the stories you hear of the Appalachian Mountains are so true. If you have any encounters with this or any experience, or you have any stories to share about the Appalachian Mountains, leave it in the comments because I would love to know your experience.
The creepiest story I've heard out of the Appalachian Mountains was that of Jack and Betty Harrison. Now, Jack and Betty had been married for 20 years. They had 4 children and lived in a double-wide trailer. Now, Jack was a miner and his wife Betty was a waiter. And they really didn't have the salary to upgrade to a better home. And this double-wide trailer that they lived in was kind of too small for their family. Well, one day, Jack gets a promotion at the mine and ends up making more money. So for the first time, he buys his wife and family their first home. And it was this, just nice little 3-bedroom ranch style home in a rural area with a couple acres of land. And they think they're gonna go and, start this new chapter in their life. Well, day one, Jack and Betty and the family, they pull up to the house. And the first thing they notice when they get out of the car is that there are all of these deer just standing in the yard. And they're just staring at them as they are going into the house and moving stuff in, and they do not move. Well, Jack thought this is weird because he figured, they would get spooked and run away, but he just assumed that maybe the prior people who lived there were feeding them. So they end up getting everything moved in for the day, and the kids are upstairs playing in their new rooms. The dogs are outside kind of running around in the woods, and it starts to get nightfall. So Jack goes to the front door, and as soon as he opens the front door, the dogs run inside like they're scared. And he thought that's weird because usually he almost has to drag the dogs inside when they get a chance to run around out in the woods. And right as the dogs ran past him, he starts hearing this loud howling coming from the woods. And he said it was almost like, howl, but it was not like an animal, but something more mechanical. And he said he heard this just like a couple times, and then it would stop. Day 2. Jack gets up in the morning, gets a cup of coffee. He goes outside the house. And when he goes onto his front porch, he discovers 13 bird carcasses laying on his porch. And he thinks, like, that is really odd. Like, sometimes birds run into the house, but why are there like 13 birds here placed just perfectly on the porch? So he kind of just, shakes it off, and he removes these carcasses from the porch. Fast forward later that night, he goes to call his dogs in for the night. Except his dogs don't respond. And he calls them again. They don't come. So Jack goes out, gets a flashlight, and he's kind of looking through the woods, yelling for his dogs, calling for them. And as he's walking through the woods, he can hear something moving alongside him. And when he would start walking, it would start walking. And when he would stop, it would stop. So Jack was like, maybe they'll come back in the morning. I'm like, this is kind of freaking me out. I'm going back to the house. So he goes back home. Day 3. They wake up the next day and still can't find the dog. They're going to the woods, calling for the dogs. They are nowhere to be found. Later that night, they all go to sleep except for Jack. Jack is sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden, he sees his wife walk down past the hallway to the front door, open the front door, and walk out the door. So he's like, that's weird. What is she? Where is she going this late at night? So Jack gets up and he starts following his wife Betty, and he can see her walking in the yard, and she starts to walk into the woods. Now Betty just has a nightgown on. She doesn't have any shoes or anything else except for this nightgown. Jack starts following her into the woods, and they get, a good couple 100 feet into the woods, and Jack is like, yo, Betty, what are you doing? Betty doesn't respond. She just keeps walking. And finally, Betty stops right in the middle of the woods next to this giant stone that is just sitting there. And then Betty just turns her head and looks up and just kind of like freezes in that position. And so Jack's yelling, Betty, what's wrong? Why aren't you responding? Like, what's going on? And finally, Betty snaps out of it. And she comes to and is like, what am I doing out in the woods? She's like very confused, has no idea how she's ended up in the woods. And Jack's like, you walked out here. Like, what are you talking about? And so he gets her and brings her back inside and makes sure she's all right. And then she goes to bed. Day 4. Once again, they are searching for the dogs. They can still not find them anywhere. Jack talks to his wife Betty about what happened the night before. And she said, all I remember is I had this weird dream that there was a spaceship and it was taking me up into the sky. And then I woke up and I was in the middle of the woods. So Jack, is trying to like rationalize maybe you were just, some kind of sleepwalking or something. That night, when everyone goes to bed, Jack goes to bed as well. And all of a sudden, he hears his wife get up. And she starts walking out of the bedroom. The kids, right now, are coming out of their bedroom. And they're following the mom. And Jack's yelling at them like, "What are you guys doing? What are you doing? What's going on?" And they don't say anything. And they all walk out the front door. And so Jack runs out the door after him, and he's trying to grab the kids, and he's trying to grab his wife and shake them like to get their attention. And they just keep on walking into the woods. And, finally, they all end up at that rock again, and they turn their head up. And they just look up to the sky. And so Jack's like yelling at him, "What's going on? Come on, guys, come to." And finally, boom, they like all just snap out of it. And they're like all confused once again how they got out into the woods. So, like, Jack is like, right now is like terrified at this point because he doesn't know what is going on with his family. And why are they walking out into the woods? So, day 6, once again, they still can't find the dogs. And Jack asked his wife and his kids, what happened last night? Why did you guys go out into the woods? And they said, we had this dream that we were getting taken up by this spaceship. And then we woke up and we were in the woods. And so Jack's like, "You know what? I'm keeping a close eye on you guys tonight and making sure you don't go outside and stuff." And so the whole family is kind of at this point really terrified. But they all sleep in the same bedroom that night. Jack's sitting in a chair watching them. And once again, 12:30 at night, the whole family, except for Jack, gets up and they walk out of the house. They start walking into the woods. No response. He can't get them to come out of this trance that they're almost in. They walk into the woods right to that same spot where the rock is, and they all put their heads up. And so as Jack's yelling at them, Jack begins to realize he is not alone. It's not just him and his family. As he's looking around in the woods, he sees all of these black shadows standing around him. And they start moving their hands, beckoning him. And they say, "Come with us, come with us." And they're whispering, "Come with us, come with us." And all of a sudden, he hears barking. And he sees the shadow of what look like his dogs. And he's calling his dogs "Come here, come here." But they won't leave these people that are standing in the woods saying, "Come here, come here." Finally, the family snaps to, and he's like, "Come on, we got to get back to the house right away." And they all run back to the house. And when they get back to the house, they, are all just at this point we're not staying here anymore. So they hadn't sold their double wide trailer yet, so they end up going back to their double wide trailer. The next day, day 7, right, Jack calls up the realtor and it's is there, some kind of deal with this house? What is going on? My family has been doing all this weird stuff and they went out into the woods. And the realtor says, "Look, I'll be honest with you, I was just trying to sell the house and make money, but there was a family that lived there before you, and all of them disappeared. Like the whole family, like disappeared, and they never knew what happened to them. But a lot of folks said that they were acting strange before they disappeared, and they kept going out into the woods at night. But like, no one knew what had happened to them. And so Jack, when he hears this, he's like, yeah, we're not going back to this house again.